Good luck, Trinity.
Good luck.
Good luck, Trinity.
Good luck, Sam. Good luck, David.
Hi, my name is Sam Scott. I'll be your first affirmative speaker. Thank you for judging.
Hi, David Rorberg. I'll be your second affirmative speaker. Thank you for your time.
I'm Trinity Klomparens, and I'll be your first negative speaker. Thank you for judging.
Hi, I'm Chung. I'll be your second negative. Thank you.
So before we start this round, is there anything you'd like to tell us about yourself that might help us debate specifically to you or any past experience you have judging?
I've only done one other competition last year, so I'm new to this. So you can know that. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you have kids in the event, or?
I don't. My husband's the youth pastor here at the church, so we have students that we know.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In 2014, Russia committed one of the most cunning military maneuvers in recent history, the invasion of Ukraine. Russia controlled the energy supply, and Ukraine was completely at their mercy. While the situation was tragic, history is looking to repeat itself with one of our closest allies, of Japan. Energy is essential in order to control the world, as Russia proved here. But right now, the U.S. has the opportunity to freely trade our energy supplies for the same control, and that's why we stand resolved that the United States federal government should substantially reform its trade policy towards Japan. This round is going to focus on a substance called liquefied natural gas, also known as LNG. This is simply natural gas that's been supercooled until it's converted into a liquid form, making it easier and more cost-efficient to ship around the world. Natural gas is used in things like power generation and transportation. Now, right now in the United States, we have a huge amount of this that we're unable to export. The background point is U.S. excess of LNG. Our background is U.S. excess of LNG. Recently, we have greatly increased our natural gas production in the United States to the point where we're actually hurting the industry, according to CNN in 2013. Quote, thanks to the fracking-led energy boom, the U.S. natural gas prices have collapsed. The flow of gas from many recently drilled wells has actually been shut off, as pumping it out costs more than the gas can be sold for. Prices in other parts of the world aren't nearly so low. In Japan, they're nearly 5 times as high as in the United States, end quote. What we can see here is that there's enough energy to go around, but we'll see why the market isn't taking advantage of it in our harm of U.S. regulations prevent export. Our harm is U.S. regulations prevent export. In a free market, U.S. companies would take advantage of the price difference and export natural gas to countries where it is most needed, such as Japan. However, the regulations for exporting LNG to Japan are far too inefficient. Permits for exporting LNG to Japan take the backseat to permits going to countries that we have certain trade agreements with in the Department of Energy. Because of all this, companies basically cannot export LNG to Japan, according to the Environment and Energy Publishing, quoting an expert in this field on April 27th of 2015. Quote, the government's slow walk policy on non-free trade export permits amounts to a de facto ban on LNG exports, says Bob Franklin, ExxonMobil Corp's president of gas and power marketing. Most applications, including ours, are languishing in the approval purgatory, end quote. The impact of this is free market restricted. Free market restricted. When the permitting processes are prolonged to this extent, it severely harms the market. There's a massive opportunity cost to U.S. companies, and we're shutting down job growth, which ultimately hurts the American people. This problem can be easily resolved with our plan. Our plan is to streamline regulations. Again, our plan is streamline regulations. Mandates. Require permits for exporting LNG to Japan to have the same approval process as those for free trade agreement countries as instituted by the Department of Energy. That process being that the Department of Energy will deem all export permits to Japan in public interest, meaning that exports are allowed. So basically what our plan does is we put LNG exports to Japan in the same category as exporting LNG for a free trade agreement country. This plan is going to end up creating growth and strengthening relations. Advantage one is U.S. economy. U.S. economy. By removing these regulations, we're allowing the free export of LNG to Japan. Subpoint A is Japanese demand. Again, that's Japanese demand. Japan is one of the largest importers of LNG in the world, responsible for about a third of total global imports, which makes them extremely dependent on other countries, according to Forbes in March 2014. Quote, with its nuclear power plant still shut, Japan is increasingly dependent on foreign suppliers for oil and gas. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry stated that there is no change to Japan's resource discussions with Russia, end quote. Japan still has a massive demand for LNG. There's also a huge incentive to buy LNG from the United States because US LNG is 5 times cheaper, as we said earlier, in order to replace some of their more expensive supplies. Subpoint B is production increases. Subpoint B is production increases. As companies are able to export LNG freely, the production of natural gas in the United States will also increase to its full potential. This leads to several massive benefits according to the American Petroleum Institute in 2015. Quote, exporting natural gas would directly support thousands of US jobs in engineering, manufacturing, construction, and the operation of the export infrastructure, as well as others indirectly along the equipment supply chain. Contrary to claims that LNG exports would reduce domestic supply, LNG exports would drive additional US natural gas production and support thousands of additional jobs created through increased production, end quote. There are 2 main impacts to this. Impact 1 is economic stability. Economic stability. By opening this up, we'll be able to export to our full capacity. Going off that statistic and what our capacity is expected for export is expected to be, we will gain about 244,000 jobs under our plan. And putting that number of jobs in perspective, that's about 5 times as many jobs as the Keystone XL pipeline could have created. Creating that many jobs will massively increase the economic activity going on in the United States, giving the US the ability to protect the livelihoods of the entire nation. Impact 2 is stable energy. Stable energy. We will now have stable energy production in the United States because there is actually a demand driving steady production. When we have a guaranteed source, confidence in the economy is increased, which benefits our stocks, economic growth, and ultimately goes back to helping us as consumers. As well as assisting the economy, we will also be helping Japan take a stance against one of the most brutal countries in the world today, which is Russia. Advantage 2 is Russia countered. Russia countered. Subpoint A, Russian power increasing. The political situation with Russia has been developing into a military concern, as seen with the recent Russian involvement in Syria, their advancements into Ukraine, and even flying bombers off the coast of Japan. Japan is extremely dependent on growing power for LNG. As we said earlier, they are incapable of reducing their dependence right now. Subpoint B is Japan constrained. Japan constrained. Because of this dependence, Japan can't take any action against Russia's aggression, according to Forbes in 2014. Quote, the Russian decision to send military forces to the Ukraine has created a painful set of choices for Tokyo. Like some in Europe, Japan's energy dependence on Russia makes the idea of sanctions troubling. With China increasingly challenging its sovereignty over islands in the East China Sea, Japan can hardly hesitate to stand up for others around the globe who are challenged by great power land grabs, end quote. Japan can't afford to do nothing in these situations, yet that's exactly what they're doing because Russia controls the energy. Subpoint C is dependence reduced. Dependence reduced. If we export LNG to Japan, it will substantially reduce their dependence. From the Center of Strategic and International Studies in May of 2014. Quote, some in Japan see the potential for stronger US-Japanese energy ties would provide both security and leverage for the Japanese as they pursue negotiations with Russia, despite a high degree of skepticism that Russia can deliver a fair deal. In fact, the US LNG export potential could curtail temptations from those within Russia who may be inclined to use its energy resource wealth as a tool to advance their geopolitical objectives with Japan, end quote. The impact of all this is international stability. International stability. Russia is a major threat to Japan, who will now be able to counter them because they are no longer tied by energy to their opponent. The first thing Russia did in Ukraine, and now with the rest of Europe, was threaten to cut off their gas supply. They can replace their supply from Russia with US gas, and because of this, they won't be at the mercy of Russia. This means Japan can take the necessary ideological stance and preserve their sovereignty. We ask that you pass this plan for growing and allowing the free market to flourish, giving the United States control over LNG, and providing a secure environment in the Asian Pacific region. I'm now ready for any questions the NIGIF team happens to have.
Ready?
Yep.
Hey Sam, I just have a couple of questions for you. Starting off, may I see a copy of your 1AC?
There you go.
Thank you. I'll hand that back to my partner. So first of all, just an overall clarification question. Are we streamlining regulations overall or specifically to Japan?
Specifically to Japan, what we're doing is we're basically taking the export permits that, for LNG to go to Japan and basically classifying them as a free trade agreement country. What this means is that the review process isn't quite as strenuous because we classify it as in public interest.
Okay, so it's specifically towards Japan.
Yes.
All right, moving on. How would the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, I believe, which is the free trade agreement that's going to be passed relatively soon between the United States and Japan, how would that affect the LNG export process within the U.S.?
All right, so the TPP, the problem with the TPP is it actually harms our industry massively, and we really don't want that to pass. Right now, there are several issues coming up, so it probably won't be passing. However, the TPP would expedite this because obviously we would have a free trade agreement with Japan. There's several other issues with that, however, so we don't want it to pass, and it doesn't look like it's going to pass.
Okay, so are there any specific issues that would prevent U.S. LNG producers through the TPP to produce over to Japan?
There's nothing that would prevent them from shipping it to Japan under the TPP. However, what the TPP also does is it would outsource a lot of United States jobs. We would lose a massive amount of money in the deal. It's just a bad deal that the United States definitely shouldn't pass.
All right, one more quick question, moving on to a little different route. What industries within the United States use LNG produced domestically?
What industries? Well, obviously the energy industry. That's mainly what it's used for, is energy production. However, right now we have such an excess that they basically shut off the wells. They're not pumping it out anymore. We can export freely and we'll still have a massive supply here in the United States.
Okay, so right now we're not using that excess LNG.
Of course not. That's why
Okay.
we shut off the wells, job growth is stalled, and companies are actually laying people off because they're not growing anymore.
Okay, and does Japan have, what kind of infrastructure is needed to house these LNG imports?
Well, Japan is actually the world's largest LNG importer, so they definitely have the infrastructure built up. If you want specifics on the infrastructure, you need specific terminals to receive it, you need tanks to store it. Japan has all that set, definitely. They're the world's largest importer of LNG. Accounting for about a third of the world's LNG imports, they can definitely handle this. United States gas is basically just replacing the more expensive gases that they're buying right now.
Okay, and one quick question about, I believe it was your subpoint B, or no, subpoint C of your advantage 2 of Russian counter,
Yes.
dependence reduced. So do you know the date of when that evidence was published?
That was
exactly?
in May of 2014. From the
Okay, so
Center
do we have any more recent evidence from 2015 or 2016 that explains the different prices?
different prices?
Or, excuse me,
That is, I believe that
The
we have some more,
independence, yeah.
we have some more at the table. I would need to check on that. However, the fact of the matter is that Japan, when Russia's gotten aggressive in the past, Japan hasn't been able to respond.
okay, and is Russia the main contributor of LNG to Japan?
Russia's one of their largest suppliers. They don't provide a majority, they provide a plurality, because Japan imports so much LNG, even the amount that Russia supplies is a very significant amount. And if it was to suddenly cut off, it would definitely damage their economy.
Alright, thank you, I have no further questions.
Thanks.